What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Friday Night Chat, aka the Friday Night Shit Chat. This is the podcast where we drink beer and talk random shit about random topics. I'm your host tonight, Nikko, aka the Movie Master,
I'm your Huckleberry.
joined by Dan the Heartthrob
Hello, everybody.
and Nick the Dungeon Master.
What's up, guys?
Gentlemen, welcome to another Friday Night Shit Chat. So let's get it started with finding out what everybody's drinking. Nick, what are you drinking tonight?
Well, I got Angry Orchard again. However, I have a twist this time. I'm adding a shot of Fireball to it.
Oh, you sneaky son of a gun!
Yes,
Somebody's tying one on tonight.
I suppose.
Dan, what about you? What you got tonight, bud?
I'm having an Allagash White.
Ooh.
Allagash White. That sounds fancy. Well, I'm gonna join you in the fancy club, Dan. I've got myself a Sapporo Premium Japanese beer.
Ooh.
Oh,
Sláinte, guys.
I guess I'm getting lit. Okay.
Nick's getting lit because tonight the topic is comic books. Talking about comic books we've read, comic books we like, maybe some comics that we'd like to read. Let me start the conversation off a little bit because I feel like I probably by far have probably read more comic books than anybody in the group. Plus, I am a big superhero nerd anyway. So, but
Nerd.
nerd. Too bad I don't have an actual like nerd freaking sound effect. Let's see what I got here. Something that. I don't know. I can't find anything.
Do it. Do it.
Anywho, just in general, I mean, I've always been a comic book fan, at least since I was, I don't know, probably like 4 or 5, maybe even sooner than that. I mean, we've talked at length about movies and TV shows and video games and stuff, but by far my favorite stuff has always been anything that has to do with superheroes. So DC, Marvel, anything that might be like independent, like from Image or Top Cow or stuff like that. It's probably no surprise to you guys, and probably no surprise to a lot of people on the internet, and specifically followers of my other podcast. I am a Batman fan through and through. Followed very closely second by his protege Nightwing, and then from Marvel, Spider-Man. By far, like my 3 of my favorite characters of all time. I love reading anything with them. I just love their characters in general. Just to kind of just give you a quick either recommendation or like to tell you what my favorite Batman comic book probably is. Again, this is going to sound kind of cliche to comic book fans out there, especially people who know Batman, but The Dark Knight Returns by Frank Miller, probably like one of my most favorite Batman works in like ever. I read it probably at least once a year. That might be followed closely by, it's called, it's Batman, is it Cacophony? That one's written by Kevin Smith. That's actually pretty good. Batman R.I.P. is a really good storyline. But yeah. Why don't I turn it over to you boys? Dan, why don't you go ahead and enlighten us as to any sort of comic books that you have read, or maybe some comic book characters that you're really into.
All right. Well, my list is going to be a little bit short because I didn't get into comic books until I was older. But the first comic book that I read was Batman Who Laughs, and we talked about it a little bit on a previous episode about hobbies because I brought up that Batman Who Laughs statue that I wanted to buy that was like $300. And then after I read that one, I ended up reading Dark Knight's Metal, which I think was supposed to be like a prequel to the Batman Who Laughs. And then the only other comic book that I've read a little bit was DC Vampires. So, like you, Nikko, I'm DC through and through. Batman is my favorite superhero so far. And I think one comic book that I kind of would want to read, I think it's Midnighter. I think it's was that from the 90s? But yeah, that one kind of caught my eye a little bit. Was it around there? I don't know.
Midnighter's still around. So real quick, Dan, awesome recommendation in terms of like, or I mean, at least that's awesome that you're into Batman Who Laughs, and then you kind of like retroactively went back to see what his deal was. The Dark Knight's Metal, or is it Dark Knight's Metal, or was it? I think maybe it was just called Dark Knights. See, because DC had a storyline, especially after Batman Who Laughs came out, because he became such a popular character, and then just like the quote unquote lore, or the like, you know, the story behind him and everything became so cool that they ended up turning it into what DC likes to call like a crisis event, where basically something universally like universe shaking happens to like change the status quo of the like DC landscape. So it started off with Dark Knights, I believe, where he's introduced, and then he has like a team of other Batmen from other like negative multiverse or negative universes that all have like different powers based on like members of the Justice League. It's really cool. Like all of them are really cool, and then like it expands out later on. So like the story that you read, the Batman Who Laughs, that dives deeper into like his background, I believe, and like where he came from and how he came to be. And then eventually it turned into it was Dark Knight's Metal, which was like it was a much like bigger story where it eventually like ultimately ended with them having to fight the Batman Who Laughs, because he becomes like a multiversal like entity. It's insane. It's really freaking awesome. What they did with this character and everything, and then basically finally like how he ended and everything, I think was like a really good like crescendo to his character. So that's a really good pull, man. It's a really good pull. And then in terms of Midnighter, though, Midnighter is so there was I'm trying to remember where it came from. I think it was it Wild Pack? I don't remember exactly, but at one point, oh no, Wildstorm. Sorry, they came from Wildstorm. There was like there was a group of authors that worked at DC that decided that they wanted to like create their own label, and so they ended up creating Wildstorm Comics, and they made a team called the Authority, which were all kind of like pastiches of Justice League characters. So you had Apollo, who was supposed to be Superman, then you had Midnighter, who was supposed to be Batman. Fun fact, they are lovers. Actually, I think they're married, if I'm not mistaken now. But yeah, they're still like around in the comic books and stuff. And the Authority as a whole, they're like really like cool characters. And it's just a really cool like really cool like the storylines are really cool, but then just their cast of characters in general are all really cool. But yeah, Midnighter's supposed to be, he's basically like Batman, but he actually has like some form of superpowers. Like you think he has like super strength. But he also is like partially crazy or some shit.
No, yeah, I read a
It's
little
really
bit on it. Yeah. Like I read, yeah, a little bit of the backstory, and yeah, it sounds pretty interesting. And it's something that I definitely want to read.
yeah, dude. I would definitely get into it, especially because now is like a good time to start getting into it. Um, DC for those who know, in terms of like their movies, they finally kind of like started to reboot the movie universe to have like a bigger, wider, connected universe in terms of their movies. Um, and it hasn't been rumored. It's been announced that they do plan on making an Authority movie. So you have the Authority, Midnighter, Apollo, Jenny Quantum, and like all of these other cast of characters and stuff that like are on that team will be in more than likely be in that movie. So I think you're getting in at like the right time if you decide to start reading anything with Midnighter.
Ooh. That's good too, because I think for the longest time I always kind of wondered why DC hasn't, because there's so many like comic characters that aren't in movies, and I feel like it's just a huge missed opportunity for DC. But I'm excited to hear that. Looking forward to that.
Yeah, man, I can't wait for Superman this summer. That's supposed to help kick off that new era of DC. So we'll see how that goes. Let's move it over to you, Nick. What's a comic book that you've read and maybe a comic book character that you're really into, or maybe you want to learn some more about?
I can't read. Oh, right. uh well, I mean, like pretty much the first comic book, I guess you could say that it's not even a comic book. It was actually a manga. Back when I was way back when in high school, the high school days. And again, I don't remember how I got into it. It was a manga called Love Hina. I think I literally was just at a bookstore and all of my other friends were into manga at the time. Like that was like the thing to do was buy manga and read manga and stuff like that. So I was like, sure. I just grabbed one at random and picked it up, and I wound up actually really liking the series. It's like your basic mangas. Boy meets girl. Things start to escalate. Things never happen. It's very clumsy and funny. And then, like, at the end, it's like they get together and the series ends because it's not funny anymore. So, but like, I don't know. I don't want to say that I was following suit, but I very much was following suit with everybody else reading manga at the time. And I can't remember what was popular. Gosh. Oh man, there's a really close friend of mine was reading one that I was going to try to get into, and now I can't remember the name of it. I remember the character's name, but anyway, it's not really that exciting. But like Dan, my comic book list is teensy tiny. But moving on to actual comic books. A couple
Hang
years
on one
ago.
second, Nick. Sorry, I
Sure.
don't mean to cut you off, but
No, you're
sorry.
good. What's up?
But you were on the train of manga, and so this isn't a manga I've read, but I watched the anime, which is basically
The
just
same
a show
thing.
based on a manga. And it's in that same sort of realm, in that same sort of genre that you were talking about for Love Hina. Because Love Hina is like it's a romantic comedy slash like a slice of life. There's this it's a really funny show. It's called Yamada's First Time B Got a HK. It's a for sure a romantic comedy, and it's a little bit slice of life, and it's like really like coming of age. It's basically about a teenage girl's first, like her like going through high school, trying to like lose her virginity more or less.
Oh.
And I know that like it might sound like, oh, this is just getting into hentai territory. Trust me, it's not. It's just like it's she gets very like jealous of her friends because she's got friends who aren't virgins anymore, who say that they're not virgins anymore, and like she feels like she's the only person in school that still hasn't done it, and so she's like trying to find like the right guy, and you know, it just like hijinks ensue basically. So anytime like she's trying to like get into a dude, something happens, and like uh it's really funny because then eventually she does end up falling for a guy, and they like kind of start dating. Almost every time that they almost do it, something freaking happens so that like they don't end up doing it, and then eventually like eventually the comic or the anime ends. So, but it's a good show. I liked it. It was really funny. A friend of mine showed it to me, and I didn't expect to like it as much as I did. I was like, okay, that's actually kind of decent. And it's a really short show. It's just like a quick little 12 episode show. If you ever wanted to check it out just to see, or if you wanted to read it, it is 9 volumes, so that seems like it's a lot, but mangas tend to go kind of quick. So, but yeah, that's B, the letter B, Gata, Gatah, and then Kei, B Gata HK.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's actually an anime on Love Hina as well. I never watched it. I don't know. But yeah, I think that was like definitely the first air quotes comic book that I read, called a manga. But moving on to like my wife and I got really into Walking Dead when it came out. The first season might have already been out, which prompted me to buy the comic books for her, like the compendiums, and I started reading them. I don't know, there were zombie. I feel when that came out, the zombie stuff was just overdone. Like the video games I was playing at the time were zombie based, and like 7 Days to Die and Daisy and Resident Evil, and I'm like, and now this launches, and I'm just like, I feel like zombies at that point were just getting overdone. And season 1 and 2 of Walking Dead was great. I think I watched up to season 4, maybe. I mean, I remember the prison. I remember, is it Michonne? It was Michonne, right?
Michonne.
Michonne, thank you. Close enough. In watching the TV show, but I grabbed the comic books, and I think I read the whole first compendium, which I'm not exactly sure where that. I can't remember where exactly that put, like where the TV show would have been with and obviously they are very different. I believe the creator, I can't think of the name off the top of his head, said that like he made the TV show what the comic book should have been, or vice versa. I don't quite remember which one it was, but regardless, they were both okay. I think it was just because the whole zombie thing was I was getting burnt out on it. So, but I did stumble across a very awesome series of comic books that I kind of ties into what you guys were talking about. So there was a game that came out. At the time we were playing. Actually, it's The Walking Dead by Telltale Games. So it was like a different storytelling of in the same universe. And they came out with a game called The Wolf Among Us, and I'm like, this looks pretty cool. I like Telltale Games. I'm just gonna buy it. And it turns out that it was actually based on a comic book series called Fables. And the main character, and you talk about someone like a main character that I really like in comic books. His name is Bigby Wolf, and he is the big bad wolf, the same big bad wolf from all of your fairy tales, which is why it's called Fables. The comic book series, like I could not stop reading them. I would read them and buy the next comic as soon as I finished. I would be going to the closest Barnes and Nobles, or at the time I believe Borders was still around, and had to get the next edition. and it's the way that it's written and the way that like it's presented to you is, in my opinion, it's fantastic. You know, they kind of explain how, because they're not immortal, but like they're like basically it's like if they're as powerful as their story. So like, you know, in the same universe, the woodsman shows up, which is the woodsman from Red Riding Hood, because the Big Bad Wolf appears in Red Riding Hood and in the Three Little Pigs,
Three
and I'm
Little
sure
Pigs,
there's
yeah.
So he's got two stories. So the Big B is actually a really powerful character in the series. But then you also have the Woodsman, and he's kind of a side character, so he's not as powerful. He's still strong because like they still tell that story, but he's not as strong as the Big Bad Wolf. So I'm like, they have without spoiling completely everything, just in case anyone like wants to pick it up after this. They were forced out of I can't remember if it's called Fableland or Fairy Tale Land, and they're living in the Bronx of New York, but it's like shrouded in like mystery. Like I can't remember what it's called. Oh my god, now I'm like fumbling over my words. But they the characters themselves take things called oh, I just had it. It's magic. They make them look human, and then they call it something in the book.
Okay.
So when they're walking around the Bronx, like they look normal to normal. They look human to normal people, so no one can tell the difference. And even like their little like where they live is like looks like a rundown building, but it's really not. It's like it's shrouded in magic. They use the witches to like kind of like put an illusion up for them. But they're kicked out of Fairy Tale Land or Fableland by an adversary, and that adversary is not named until later in the series, and I'm not going to name drop it who it is. But when Ash and I both read it, like I read it first, and I'm like, I was like, I slid it to her. I'm like, you have to read this right now, all today. I don't care. And when we both found out who it was, oh my god, it was the coolest thing ever. And then yeah, I don't know. I just continued with that series until I got busier in life and stopped buying it, and I regret it because every now and then I'll go back to like the back of my basement, and I'll be like moving things around, and I'll find this series. I'm like, I want to read this again, and then man, I don't know. Just a few other quick characters in that like that I really like that stand out to me. Cinderella's an assassin. And I thought that was the coolest thing ever. So there's a few others that I have to think about, but Ichabod Crane is like he's a public figure, or he's a governmental figure.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so it's like everything like that, like every fairy tale or fable, like they appear at least once or twice in the series, and they were supposed to be developing a second game, but it's kind of in development hell right now, where like it was announced years ago, and it's like it's gone silent because obviously I think Telltale went out of business twice. So like I think this is like the third time someone's picking them up, but that's pretty much the extent of my comic book knowledge. You know, there's a few others that I'd like to read. I just haven't. Like there's a comic book featuring Cthulhu, which I love Cthulhu, so I should pick it up. I haven't.
I was just kind of quickly looking at Fables. Now, see, it's a story. It's a book that I heard of, but I never. I don't know. I just never picked up. But it was pretty much still ongoing up until like last year. It looks like, and then I didn't know this. I thought it was made like by an independent company. This is made by Vertigo, which for those who don't know, well, for the longest time was DC's like quote unquote like adult label, where they would put like mainly stories more geared towards adults, things that like kids really shouldn't read and stuff like that, things that had a little bit more like either adult humor or maybe for what is the word I'm looking for, adult themes and stuff like that. so that's what Vertigo was, which then turned into DC Black Label some years back. But yeah, apparently I didn't realize that this was a DC jam. That's pretty wild. I always thought it was like an independent book. But,
It's sorry, I don't mean to cut you off like that, but they actually do have I think as of 2021, they have a crossover. It's called Batman versus Bigby. So kind of like my favorite character from the universe and your guys' favorite character from that universe. Kind of like, I have not read it, but that would be definitely one I pick up because I do like Batman. I do like Batman quite a bit. If I had to pick out of all the superheroes and comic books, Batman would probably be my favorite as well. But since Bigby fits in the same universe as Batman, I'm going Bigby.
Yes, and I see that. Yeah, it's called Batman versus Bigby, a Wolf in Gotham. That's cool.
Yes.
Damn, that's cool, dude. Yeah, no, I definitely, that's interesting. Like, I definitely heard of it, and it was something that was like kind of in my cursory, but I just never got into it. But after hearing you talk about it, I might actually like pick this up and try to read some of it.
I'm telling you right now, like read. Oops, sorry. I sound like you were talking. Sorry.
You're good. Go ahead, man.
After you read the first two, you're not going to want to put it down because like the first one sets up like the man. I'm kicking myself in the ass because I don't remember what they're called. They're called. Yeah, hold on. They're called something. They're like charms that make them look human. But like it kind of sets it up and it kind of it sets up the story and stuff like that. But once you get to the like the second book where like you start hearing about all what's going on in like Fable, what the hell is it called? Oh my god! When you finally figure out what's going on, it's like you're not gonna want to put it down because you're gonna start seeing characters that you recognize. And you're like, oh, I wonder what his involvement in this is. And you read, as like Pinocchio appears in it, Ichabod, Cinderella, Snow White, Bigby Wolf, the three pigs are in it, and they do die. Like there are characters that die in here, and there's obviously some romance in there. Like characters will get together and stuff like that. Characters that you never thought would get together. Red Riding Hood is in here. I believe Captain Hook appears in one or two of them. So. Yeah, it's so good. What are they called? Can't remember what it's called. Oh well, we'll have to get back to it because I can't remember what they're called. I'm sure it'll pop in my head immediately. Glamours, bam, Glamours. They're called Glamours. So, but yeah, that's my favorite comic book series still to this day.
That's no relation to Fable, the game, right?
Correct, yeah. I believe Nikko asked that earlier today when we were kind of chit-chatting. No, it has no relation to Fable, the video game.
Okay, yeah, because that's the first thing that popped into my mind. I was like, I wonder if it's
bet.
the same thing.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
So I just want to back it up just a little bit. You were talking about The Walking Dead, and so the author of The Walking Dead, his name is Robert Kirkman.
Yes.
He also, I mean, he's actually done a ton of different comic books, but the ones that he's the most famous for is definitely The Walking Dead, and then a book called Invincible. Invincible actually has an animated series out currently. They actually are dropping the third season now. It's I've read parts of Invincible. Like me myself physically read them. Otherwise, I know the whole series just because it's there's like a comic book YouTuber that like he like goes through storylines, or he'll go through like a whole run of books or whatever, and he did the whole run of Invincible. And the one thing you were talking about, Robert Kirkman, and how he wanted the show to be like like the updated version of the book, more or less. At least,
Is that what it was? I couldn't remember what it was.
I think because it that would make sense just because he's doing the same thing with Invincible, where he's keeping a lot of stuff similar, but there are things that are like there's like themes or like events and stuff that happen in the book that were kind of dated and kind of like of the time, or maybe even like kind of things that he thought about as a younger writer, that he kind of cringes at now. So like he kind of uses, he at least for Invincible, he used it as a way to sort of update it a little bit. He's still telling the same story, but he's like, you know, either shaving some stuff down so like these stories don't get like over, like there's not as much filler in some of the stories. But then he's also what do you call it? He is just like updating things to make it to where it's a little bit, for lack of a better term, I guess, palatable. Just because there are certain things and certain themes, I think, in some of the books that he just, like I said, he just kind of cringed at. So he wanted to like update it. So that it would make sense that might be the reason why the book and the series of The Walking Dead might have been fairly different up to a point.
Okay, I knew it was one or the other.
Yeah, which isn't too unheard of because I mean, especially when authors are involved in like different media of their specific works, whether it's a comic book or like a book in itself, they tend to want to like, you know what, I kind of they might explain it differently in like the show or the movie or whatever than they did in like say the book, or they like, you know what, I kind of wanted to redo that, and at the time, like after releasing it or whatever like that, like at the time I just didn't like the way it came out, so I wanted to do it differently in the show or the movie or whatever have it. So not always the case, but it does happen from time to time. Like I think George R. R. Martin, right? He's the one who did Song of Ice and Fire. He kind of did some of that with some of Game of Thrones. Not a whole lot, but I know that he was consulted for certain stuff. So like I think he wanted to change certain things from the books. But
nice. So just I just did a little bit of a scraping the surface thing here. Their homeland that they're coming from is actually just called the Homelands. That's what they just referred to as just the Homelands. And one thing I forgot to mention, Bigby is the sheriff in New York, in the Bronx. They're hidden, like it's a building, but it's kind of like a neighborhood. But he's the sheriff there. So yeah, trust me, if you guys pick it up and read it, you're not going to put it down. I promise you that. It's great. So, but yeah, that's all I got about Fables.
Oh, yeah, that sounds pretty crazy.
Oh, it is. I mean, heck, I think halfway through the series, they actually go, what's it? I guess you can say overseas, and they bring in like a Sinbad and like,
nice.
Yes. So, and like even later on, Sleeping Beauty appears in there. Rose Red's in there, which is, I don't know I think she's like Snow White's sister. King Arthur appears in here. Merlin, Pinocchio. Like it's really good. I recommend it.
Yeah, dude, I'll definitely have to check it out because anytime people take like these like well-known stories, like these fairy tales or whatever like that, and turn them into like something like either updated or for like the modern audience and stuff, sometimes it tend to be pretty cool. So sometimes not. Sometimes you get stuff like, what is it called? Once Upon a Time from fucking ABC, which I've never really watched, to be fair, but like from what I understand, like almost all of those characters are basically fairy tale / Disney characters. So,
well, sorry to cut you off again, but I'm almost positive that series was supposed to be Fables, and there was there was some creative differences, and they actually could not call it Fables because they wanted to go a separate direction, and then they wound up making whatever that was because it's very close.
That's what I'm reading here. Yeah. Read a couple of issues of Fables, but believe that while the two concepts are in the same playground, they are telling a different story.
Yes. Yeah. So
they also did something similar at NBC, which is like they were wanting to develop it into a show, but they never got very far, or like not for anything further than the scripting stage. And then they eventually made a show called Grimm, which is it's like a police procedural, but set in like a fairy tale sort of world where a world where fairy tales are real. That was a very short-lived show, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if it got past like it for sure didn't get past the first season. If it got past the pilot. Oh wait, hold on. I lied. I take that back. No, the other show I was thinking of was Reaper. Grimm actually has 6 seasons apparently, 123 episodes.
Wow.
But yeah, that was. It's supposed. I mean, it's based very closely on the Grimm's brothers fairy tales, which is where a lot of fairy tales come from. So, but yeah, no, that's cool, man. I definitely would check it out. So Dan kind of mentioned it a little bit, but is there any like comic book character or characters or team or anything along those lines that you're interested in that you might want to read or get to know more about that maybe you haven't before?
Not really.
No. Well,
sorry. I'll be blunt. It's not really. I mean, I don't know. Like, when it comes to like superheroes and comic books, like, I think Spider-Man's pretty cool. I don't like the concept of Superman at all. I think, God, I can hear the keyboards in the comments right now. I don't know. I think a concept like Superman is just too boring. I guess I don't really know. It's just he like as a whole, as a cartoon, as a movie, as a comic book, as a superhero, he never interested me. I think he's the worst one.
Now, I will agree with you, but I also have to disagree with you.
Okay.
And the reason for that is like I too was of the same mind for a long time, and to some degree I still am. That Superman is kind of I don't want to say he's a nothing superhero because he's definitely not. He can definitely get boring, but that also just kind of depends on the story being told. So like there are some movies that are definitely boring of Superman, aka like Man of Steel or Superman 3 or Superman 4. But like that's just because I feel like those writers didn't really know what to do with Superman. Whereas like you read certain comic books that certain writers have of Superman, and you get to understand what the true meaning of Superman is. And like one of them being what was it? It's what's so wrong. It's either it's either called What's So Wrong or Whatever Happened to Truth, Justice, and the American Way, where it basically just kind of it talks about how it basically kind of like there's a group of powered individuals who basically become judge, jury, and executioner, and they basically mock Superman for not utilizing his power to the full potential and actually stopping crime. And basically it's the whole comic book is Superman trying to like get them to see why he doesn't, and then eventually he does break through it. Not really break through, I take that back, but he shows truly why he doesn't. And like it ends up being a really powerful book. But then at the same time there's also it's called All-Star Superman by Grant Morrison, if I'm not mistaken. That's probably, or sorry, All-Star Superman. I think that's what I just said. I don't know. For some reason, I lost the plot for a second. But like All-Star Superman by Grant Morrison, it is by far probably one of my favorite Superman books. They had an animated movie about it that like it didn't touch everything that was talked about in that book, but it got the themes right, and it's a really awesome story. It's basically like just the beauty of Superman and like what he really means to the world, and then like what it would be, what it ends up basically kind of being without him and shit. So it's really good, and like there's a reason why Superman is an important character in fiction specifically. Um, and I think I'll save that there just because I want to talk about that a little bit in a further episode for another topic that I have an idea for. So,
Fair enough.
But so the reason I asked that, Nick, is because there might be some fictional characters that you are a fan of that you might not even know actually started off in comic books, or that you might have had an idea that started off in comic books and maybe either seen them in a movie or a TV show or maybe in a video game, and then just never knew anything about. So that's why I like asked if there was any character or team or something specifically.
I don't think so. I mean, a lot of and the thing too is like the crazy thing about me is I might have mentioned this a couple episodes ago, or maybe it was just when we were chit chatting off the record, but I like the villains. Like villains is what attracts me to everything. Like even video games, like the demons and the monsters and the miniature figures or whatever is what really attracts me. Like don't get me wrong, I love like playing Doom as like the hero and stomping ass, but I really like looking at the cyber demon in Doom, or like Diablo from Diablo. So like I really like the villains in Batman, the Penguin, the Joker, Mr. Freeze. I like the villains there. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Cthulhu. Like I'm a fanboy. And like even going back to Fables, the villains in Fables, like I'm not going to say them, though you'll like know who they are. The fact that they're the villains is jaw dropping, and it's just cool. I don't know. So, I don't want to say superheroes bore me, but like it's the same. Like, to me, it's all the same. I don't know. I'm different. Leave me alone.
Well, and my whole thing was I'm trying to like tell you that not all comic books are superheroes and stuff. There's plenty of
I know that.
Are completely just doesn't even have anything to do with a superhero or a super team or people with superpowers for that matter. There's like oh god, man, I have to look up what it's called. I think is it called Wicked? Not the play.
Sure.
By James, is it by James Tynion or is it by Scott Snyder? I think it's Scott Snyder. Give me 1 second. Or maybe what is it called? There might be something. I think it's called Something's Killing the Children.
What?
Give me 1 second. I'm trying to find a where American Vampire. Okay, so there's something called American Vampire, but that's also like, well, that's from DC's Black Label. That doesn't, I mean, some of that stuff doesn't necessarily have anything to do with superheroes and stuff. There's a book called V for Vendetta, which like, although you might think that V is like a superhero just because he has some enhancements, he's not a superhero. He's a vigilante. And then the whole book is basically it's basically talking about like anarchy and basically overthrowing your government. Not to get political or anything on here, but like stuff like that could be very influential at times like these. So, or like even just maybe even a comfort to read stuff like that, just because like it puts things into perspective. So like It's and again, it made a pretty good movie too about it. So, um, I'm trying to remember, and maybe it wasn't Scott Snyder. I think it's called Something's Killing the Kids.
Oh, don't get me wrong, too. I'm not I'm not against reading comic books at all. I just can't find, well, I shouldn't say I can't find. I just don't know of any ones that would interest me. Like, I'm all for reading, graphic novels or stories. I know we touched on this a little bit beforehand, but I read a lot of the 40K novels that they had. But yeah, I mean, I would check things out that you suggest. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, this is called okay. So the one I was looking for is called Something is Killing the Children. It's by James Tynion. He's also done work on like Batman for DC, and I think he's done some stuff over at Marvel as well. But
nice.
This is the series synopsis from Boom Studios, which is where it's published. When the children of Archer's Peak begin to go missing, everything seems hopeless. Most children never return, but the ones that do have terrible stories, impossible stories of terrifying creatures that live in the shadows. Their only hope of finding and eliminating the threat is the arrival of a mysterious stranger, one who believes the children and claims to see what they can see. Her name is Erica Slaughter. She kills monsters. Is all she does, and she bears the cost because it must be done.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah, that sounds pretty interesting.
Dan, you're still here.
There's like those. So obviously, like the when you think comic books, most people think like the big two. So you think of like DC or Marvel, and that's because they've basically kind of, it's for lack of a better term, they've oversaturated the market. But that's mainly because back in the day they were like kind of the two to kind of like really start off this movement of comic books. And I mean, even to the point where like multiple like different comic book companies kind of burst onto the scene back in like the early 20s and 30s, but eventually they all just kind of got gobbled up by freaking DC Comics and what eventually became Marvel Comics. But you've got other like independent studios like Boom Studios, Top Cow, Dynamite is another one. Image, which was started by like writers from DC and Marvel. Dark Horse makes a lot of they make a lot of like independent books, but then they also make a lot of like tie-in books to like movies and stuff like that. So like they were responsible for a long time actually for doing some of the Star Wars like tie-in material, like all the extended Star Wars stuff, the extended universe stuff. They also did like Terminator, Predator, Alien, RoboCop for a long time. So like anything that like had a movie for a while, they were also doing like the tie-in books to them, and just to kind of like extend the universe and stuff for people. Which like was it Dark Horse? For a while, Dark Horse in the last couple years, they had this like creator owned driven program where they were like what do you call it? They were having like independent writers who just like wanted to throw a book out there, or even like writers from one of the famous one of the big two, and who were just like hey, this is where my independent book is going to be or whatever. Where they had like a limited run, like a 6-issue like run or whatever, and then eventually after the 6-issue run was done, which they would only release digitally initially. So they would each issue would come out digitally, and then after I think like 6 months they would release like the collected edition, so like the volume 1 or whatever, like physically. So that was pretty cool. They were doing that for like a bunch of like smaller independent writers and stuff for a while. One of which is by an author I really like named Mark Bernardin, called Adora in the Distance. That one it's a really interesting book because it kind of sets off to be it on the surface of it, it's very much like a kid's adventure book, like a young girl who's like has some power that like only she can use, and she's going out on an adventure and she has to go through all these different kingdoms and meet different people and stuff like that. And then you kind of end up realizing that the book it's really about the writer's daughter and how she has autism, and it tells like a really beautiful story and stuff like that about her kind of way that she sees the world and everything, just to kind of help people understand her a little bit more. And it's really cool. So that's the kind of stuff that like again, like that's not a superhero book by any stretch of the imagination. It's sets out to be like a Goonies style like adventure book, and in the end you kind of realize that like, hey, this is something a much more and much deeper than what it is on the surface and stuff.
Did you say Goonies? What's Goonies?
What?
I know you're fucking with me, dude. Please don't. Don't.
What's Goonies?
You're a child of the 80s. How do you not know the Goonies? You're lying to me. Aren't you?
I don't know.
Dude, we watched it. I watched it in elementary.
Oh, it's a movie? No, I've never seen that movie.
What? Oh, you have to watch it, man.
You lost
It's
so
such
many
a
cool
great
points.
movie.
I did what, Nico?
You lost so many cool points for me, dude. Oh my god.
I don't watch movies.
Oh. Okay.
Movie night at Nick's house.
Yeah, literally.
We're having board game nights, D&D nights, and movie nights over here. Freak.
All at once. No?
And paint nights.
And paint nights. You're right. Jesus. Let's have a comic book session. Is that a thing? Can you do that?
I mean, why not?
Okay.
I'll bring a long box. We'll all grab a couple issues. We'll read through them.
Actually, I just found on Amazon the Complete Fables series, issues 1 to 160. Nope, sorry, 1 to 150, and then the side stories for $187. And I think I'm just gonna buy it.
Oof.
Nice.
Doesn't matter. It's too good. It's too good not to. I have to.
Yeah, that's the whole original run too, 1 through 150.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So, anyway, I guess enough about Fable. Well, that's cool. Like that what you were talking about with the story. I mean, I don't know. It's not that I don't like them. I just never really got into that stuff. And you're right. I do think of DC and
Marvel.
Yeah, that's it. Marvel. When I think that's embarrassing. I do think of those two when I'm thinking comic books. That's why. I mean, even though technically Fables is DC, it's like it's not your normal what you would think of when you're thinking of comic books. So, and Bigby's just cool. I'm just gonna say it that way. Bigby's just cool. When you find out his backstory, you're gonna be like, "Yeah, Bigby's cool. He's cooler than Superman and Wonder Woman."
Superman. No.
Yeah, that's right, Dan.
So, Nick, I'm trying to think of something that I feel like you would probably like in terms of comic books. So,
hit me.
What I know about you is you do like Lovecraftian.
Yes.
And so right now I'm thinking of something that's mainstream. So there's a book that's, I think it's fairly new, but it's a Batman book, but it is really cool and it's really the art and it's awesome, and then it's a really good story. It's called The Doom That Came to Gotham. Hang on one second.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, It's just like a mini series. The art is really awesome in it, and then it's basically like, what if Batman was like, he's already a detective, but what if he was basically trying to fight like people trying to summon eldritch horrors.
Go on.
Like that's, I mean, that's literally it, and it's set like in the 1920s. It's really cool. It's honestly, it's pretty neat, and like the way that they like take the like characters from the Batman mythos, like his characters and like his, you know, his bad guys and stuff like that, and kind of like how they utilize them in the story, is really cool. And so this was like, I'm reading this right now, but I didn't know this, but the title of the story is "The Doom That Came to Gotham" is an allusion, not illusion, to Lovecraft's "The Doom That Came to Sarnath."
I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah, I think you would like that. And then just in general, the person who wrote it and then like helped draw it is Mike Mignola, and Mike Mignola is he is well known for his work with Dark Horse. It's called Hellboy. Hellboy is very much that. Like it's like they kind of allude to it a little bit in the movies. Again, I don't know if you've ever seen the movies, probably not, but
Hellboy movie,
like Hellboy, yeah.
I have. I've seen one of them. First,
It's probably like the first one.
yeah, is there a scene where they like go underground and there's a lot of like robots or something?
Oh no, that's the second one. That one's really cool too.
That's the one I saw. Saw the
wow.
second one before I saw the first one. I don't know why that scene is sticking in my head, but I definitely remember it.
So, but like in the first one, there is a scene where basically like an elder god is like being pulled through a portal or whatever. Hellboy mixes Lovecraft with like Tales of Camelot and stuff like that, and kind of mixes them together. And like, some would say that Hellboy is a superhero. I don't really see him as a superhero. He's a detective / like, he is a character who like is kind of put upon to be a hero, and he happens to be a demon. So like, I don't know, like that in itself is like, it's a cool concept. And then again, a lot of his stuff is very much mixed between like at least those two mythos, if not even like other mythologies and stuff like that. Because if I'm not mistaken, there's also like he does some stuff with like deities and like entities from like Japanese folklore and stuff like that too.
Nice.
So like, kind of mixes elements and shit. But like the biggest part of it is for sure like the Lovecraft like inspiration, because like because he's like the child of like an elder, like not an elder god, but he is a child of like a god that was, or like a priest or whatever, that was in a cult for a certain elder god or something like that. I don't remember exactly, but like it's really interesting. So like, I feel like that would be something that you would be into.
Yes.
And it just so happens to be a comic book.
No, it's cool. Send me it after this. Like, send me the name of it and whatnot.
Oh, for sure.
Speaking of Dark Horse comics,
Ooh,
there was one that did pique my interest a little bit. Have you heard of Night of the Ghoul?
Night of the Ghoul. It sounds kind of familiar, but let's see. Night of the Ghoul. Let's see something about a film. Hang on one second. I don't think I've heard of it, Dan. Something that piqued your interest, though.
Yeah, I because I think I would lean like for books and stuff like that. I'd like to stay more towards like the horror aspect of it. That makes sense.
Speaking my language right now, Dan.
Yeah,
Go on.
Yeah, because I think I came upon that one because we talked about it on the movie episode, but my favorite movie was The Lost Boys, and in The Lost Boys, they have a comic book scene where they're in a comic book store and they recommend one of the characters there a comic book called Vampires Everywhere, and I thought that was an actual comic book, and I looked it up and it wasn't. But you could buy it for $1,300, but it's just a movie prop. But yeah, I think after that I started looking into like more kind of like vampire-ish comic books, and then I stumbled upon that one. It's not necessarily about vampires, but from what I've read on it, it seems to be a story about this guy that stumbles across like a old movie tape, and it looks like it's the Night of the Ghoul from 1936, but then it just throws him into this journey where he ends up in like the desert somewhere, and then he's warned by like bunch of people that it's not just a movie, and like this evil being from the movie is an actual like it's an actual monster, and not like that he's got that like film canister it's after him or something like that. But it sounds pretty badass.
Oh, so like The Ring, but
yeah, I think it's similar from what I've read. That seems what it like.
That's cool. That's cool as hell, though. And like, just from the they say never judge a book by its cover, but the cover art for this is pretty lit, dude. I'm not
I judge a lot of books by their cover.
I mean, that's a comic book. You kind of, like, it's got to grab your attention, right? So, this is pretty neat, dude. Oh my god, this is fucking sick. This is a relatively new book. This came out in
23, right? Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I definitely judged the manga by its cover because those. Never mind. No, that sounds cool. No, that sounds cool. I would like that. Sounds really cool, actually. I would. I'd totally read something like that.
There's a lot of horror comics out there. It's not all superheroes.
So
yeah, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say something we don't normally do on here, folks. But if you're watching the video version of this, here, check this out. Tell me this doesn't fucking make you want to check this book out.
Wow. Yeah, that's cool.
That's gnarly.
That's pretty awesome, right? Pretty freaking
that definitely
sick.
Looks like something I would read for sure.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
For sure. So I'm gonna jump in real quick with another small one. I don't know if you guys know, but obviously, D&D is a big thing these days. And Ashley, my wife, she likes to watch a show called Critical Role. I shouldn't call it a show. It's an online like D&D session with voice actors. Like there's Matt Mercer. There's a couple of other ones. I can't remember their names exactly. Laura Bailey, I think, is one of them. But like a lot of them do World of Warcraft voices and yada yada. But they actually, for their their last, I guess you can call it season of it's a show called Critical Role. They made comic books based on like the backstory. I think it's the backstory of their characters.
Oh, that's
and I read one of them just because I was interested in like, not even the character. I actually think that so they actually I guess going to D&D a little bit here real quick. I know it's not the right episode for it, but their first season, I didn't really listen to it. I can't listen to it. She listens to it, but they actually came out with an Amazon show called Vox Machina, which is based on their first campaign, and one of the characters in that show is super badass, and I'm actually one of the coolest characters I think like in a cartoon or show, whatever. But they have their second run called The Mighty Nine, and that's what these comic books are based off of. And I bought them, most of them, for her for Christmas in the last couple of years, and I read one of them, so I guess that counts as me reading a comic book. But it's like each comic book is based on the player's character. I believe it's the background, but she might correct me later on if it's not. But it's just really cool to see stuff like that where it's like someone's D&D's character backstory. Obviously, they're famous actors or whatever, but their backstory in comic book form is just it's pretty cool.
No, yeah, that is pretty neat, and so just to kind of piggyback off that a little bit, gentlemen, we've heard of He-Man, right? He-Man and the Masters of the Universe.
Yeah,
I've got the power. Or was that the what's
Here
the
your closest. I have
the power. Yeah.
Anyways, I didn't know this until recently, but so I mean, He-Man was like the cartoon was basically a long advertisement for the toys, which a lot of TV shows back in the day, that's exactly what they were. The toys actually, they used to come with little comic books to like explain what the characters, like who the characters were, and then like it was like an ongoing story as to like, you know, why He-Man and Skeletor were at odds, and who the Masters of the Universe were, and who the Forces of the Snake Mountain was, and all this other shit. So like, I had never thought of that before. I like didn't know that was a thing, and then when I like heard about that, I was like deep diving, like, let me see what's this all about. Yeah, that's exactly what they were. I mean, they weren't like long drawn out stories or anything like that, but they were like little adventure stories for like people, like if they wanted to, they could play along and with the comic book with their toys and be like, you know, either seeing stuff from the comic or just like extending the story and stuff. So
that's cool. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
I was gonna say that kind of stuff is cool. I know, like I knew the He-Man cartoon was an advertisement for their toys because they were. There's actually a documentary on Netflix. I'm not going to go into super big detail, but I learned that from that documentary. That like they were pumping money into the cartoon to sell the toys like faster or stronger or whatever, but the fact that they had like everything came with like a small comic book, that's really cool because I feel like that adds to the story of the thing.
Yeah.
No, yeah, 100%. Because then I mean, then you like again, it just gives you like a history of like, because even in the comic book, I think the comic books were a little bit different than like the show, because the show had to be, you know, marketable for kids and like okay for kids to watch, whereas like the comic book, they had, you know, I think they were a little bit more like laissez-faire, sort of, so to speak, but they can have like a little bit quote unquote more complex stories or backgrounds for the characters and stuff. Whereas like obviously in the show, it's got to be in and out in freaking 15 to 20 minutes, so intercut with all of the freaking, you know, He-Man, you know, toy commercials and shit. So, but yeah, I mean, stuff like that is really cool. And like, I mean, they even, I think to this day, they still do that with, it's more independent, like toy distributors do that, where they'll include a comic, or they might have like a website you can go to like read a quick like little narrative or whatever, or a comic book about like this character that they've released, you know, that you bought or whatever. One that comes to, well, I don't know if they actually do the comic book or not, but now I'm diving into toys and stuff, but this is how
surprise.
But Mezco Toys, they have their own line of toys. So they license, you know, various like properties and stuff like that. So like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, you know, DC, Marvel Comics and stuff like that. But like they also have their own line called Rumble Society, which is like sort of like 1920s, 1930s like pop characters, so to speak, but like sort of different. Like they have one character called Gomez who is like a humanoid roach. Um, they also have like characters. I think one is called Baron Benz. One is called like, is it the Scarlet? I can't remember. Doc Midnight is another one, or Doctor Midnight, or something like along those lines. But they're like sort of like, you know, poppy, like pop fiction characters and stuff like that, or pulp fiction characters. It's really cool, and like they all have like their own little story and background to them and stuff too.
Nice.
I don't really know it just because those toys are a little expensive for my taste, but they're really cool. They have cool designs. So
no, that's pretty sweet. I like things like that have multiple ways to consume lore. Like, you know, obviously Batman, like superheroes are a big one because you got like, you know, your comic books, your movies, your novels and stuff like that. So I think comic book is a pivotal like storytelling tool for most things. I don't know. It's just for me, I hate to say it, I just never really got into it, and it sucks. But I might check out that one that you just posted that Dan recommended or that he saw because that looks cool. I'm not gonna lie.
it does look cool. I kind of want to check it out myself because that looks pretty sick. But so I guess my whole thing is like it's not unheard of for certain properties and like things to have like extra or extraneous like media to like kind of dive deeper into like the lore of things. So it's like obviously like, you know, D&D has multiple freaking, you know, guidebooks or stories and stuff like that. I mean, something that comes to mind is like Halo apparently has like a long book series as well. What else?
40K.
40K has a ton that freaking like has to do with it. There's something else. TES, the Elder Scrolls. They have books that are like, you know, that tie into all the games and stuff as well. Freaking the Witcher series has like a bunch of books that, which I don't know which came first. Was it the video game or was it the book? I feel like it was the book that came first, right?
It might have been. I'm not too sure on the Witcher. Dan, you got any ideas?
No idea.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but I know that like as well as being a video game, they've also had like books, or they have books, as well as like a TV series, but series of 8 fantasy novels and 15 short. When did these come out? 1990, so like in the 90s. So yeah, that was probably 86 to 2024. So I think maybe the newer ones probably are a little bit more in line with like the video games. But yeah, they started off as books and then had video games made about it. There was another one that I just had mine, but now I can't remember. But at the same time, like some of those mediums can also be like comic books as well. So like one that kind of comes to mind is there was it's made by NetherRealm Studios, so like the same company that's behind Mortal Kombat. They made Injustice, so they made Injustice and then Injustice 2. They actually, I mean, DC, which is by the way, is the DC fighting game. They also had comic books that tied into that, like that lived in that universe, right? So it's like an alternate DC universe or whatever, where all of them basically are like Mortal Kombat characters and like fight and all this other crap. So it's just interesting. I don't know. I've always, since I was young, I've been a fan of comic books. I never really got into them until I got a little bit older. Mainly after like after I saw like X-Men and Spider-Man, those movies, those really like ignited and re-sparked my like, oh, there's like places that these movies come from and they're comic books, and let me go learn more about these characters. And then That's why I'm doing this now, folks, is because I am a big fat nerd.
Me too. Dan's a hot
All
nerd.
of us.
Yeah, but you're hot at least.
No, that's Nikko. Oh,
Yeah. Okie dokie.
Pookie Wookie right there.
Ooh.
And don't start something you can't finish, buddy.
Oh no!
Oh,
Oh no.
it's getting hot. Okay.
But I mean, we talked about stuff that we've read, stuff that we kind of want to read, people we might be into. I don't talk about this too often. I don't think I've talked about it with you guys. But for the longest time, I've been working on creating a comic book universe of my own.
Ooh.
I haven't talked about it too much publicly. Not that I'm very famous or anything like that, folks. But
You're not?
Like and subscribe. Maybe share these videos out there. Maybe I can be, but it's something I've been playing close to the chest for a long time. And for the longest time, I mean, I still go up and down as to like what form of media would I eventually release this in. For the longest time, it was just they were just drawings, and I wanted to make I kind of want to make a comic book, and then I eventually was like, ooh, but I want to make them into a video game. And so for like a while, I was pursuing getting into school for like creating video games. And I remember I had like an epiphany moment. Somebody kind of helped me see it when I went to go. I was applying for the Art Institute. I was applying for the Art Institute, and I was in an interview with one of the counselors, and I was talking about the characters that I had been creating, and I was just talking about like the world that I wanted to build and like what was different about them and all this other stuff. And he was like, dude, I'm gonna tell you straight up, like, this doesn't sound like a video game that you want to make. It sounds like a straight up comic book that you want to make. And I was just like, I guess you're right. Like, I do kind of want to make them into comic books. And like, so for the longest time now, I've been like kind of writing the stories and writing the backgrounds of these characters to fit a comic book narrative. But then like, as time goes on, I start thinking more and more like, this would be a really killer freaking video game series potentially. And then I've even, tossed around the idea of like, hey, maybe I just make these into freaking, because I've started customizing. I think I even showed you a picture of it, Nick, but like I started customizing my own, like one of my own characters, completely whole cloth, like own, one that I created or whatever. And I was like, damn, what if I made these into toys, sold the action figures, and then just had like little comic books that accompany them so people could freaking read the comics, or if they didn't accompany it, maybe like have a website where they can go and read the stories or the backgrounds of these characters or whatever. And so
that's a solid idea, Nikko. I'm not gonna lie. That's a solid idea.
Yeah, that sounds badass.
Just saying.
I appreciate that. It's still like in the works, and it's still like quote unquote in the development stages, but like I've been kicking around these ideas for a long time, and for the most part, I mean, they are superheroes, but with the overall story that I want to tell, it kind of goes beyond just being superheroes. It's more or less like it's definitely going to have some Lovecraftian elements to it.
Ooh, okay, you got my attention.
There's going to be some D&D elements to it.
Ooh.
No, I'm just kidding.
What?
No, like not D&D, but like in terms of like it's going to have like RPG in the sense of like the characters are all going to have certain roles to play within the narrative. Obviously, that's what characters do in the narrative, but I mean like they'll fulfill certain like archetypes and roles that are based around like RPGs and stuff like that too. So, but yeah, that's I don't know. I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. So, folks, if you're listening and you're interested in that sort of thing, my Cash App is no. Help encourage me to follow through with it, because maybe someday soon I talk about it more, either maybe on this podcast or on the other, or maybe I start a series on the channel where I kind of talk about those characters or talk about the stories and stuff like that. And who knows, maybe it can evolve into something more or something different than what I had originally planned. But yeah.
Oh, that's pretty sweet, man. Hopefully you're able to get everything together and put something out, man. I'll definitely read that, buy the figures, everything. I love it. I love interactive stuff like that, man. Honestly, that's a great idea.
I appreciate that. Anyways, I'm trying to see how we can steer back into the conversation of comic books as me talking about that crap. Obviously, comic books lately have been the thing I feel like people are turning to for content. Especially in terms of like IP. But then again, that's not really anything new. Like Hollywood has always kind of turned to, whether it's video games or comic books or even just like normal books, and to like get like some sort of IP in order to like get a story so that they can write a script and then make a movie. Which like obviously like that also kind of helps to sort of give advertisement to like the original form or the original media, in order for people to like, you know, consume or get into it. But I would argue that's, I mean, a lot more studios are looking towards comic books nowadays. And I don't know, I feel like to some degree there's been a little bit of like comic book fatigue or superhero fatigue, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
What's your like view of that? Do you think like there is such thing as superhero fatigue or comic book fatigue? And
I wouldn't
Hollywood is
say
still not
maybe
original, or?
Yeah, maybe not comic book fatigue, but I can understand why people would think that, you know, there would be a lot of superhero fatigue, because kind of like what Nick was saying, like he doesn't really like much of the like stuff about like being the superhero and whatnot. And I can kind of understand that, because I think growing up, I went through a small phase where I was kind of like, you know, these guys are always a good guy winning, and you know, and I would kind of try and see stuff from like the villain point of view. So I could kind of understand that. Because I think for a while now they were making like every movie was just like a straight superhero movie, and we weren't having like, we used to have like vigilante movies, but I don't feel like they're not as popular now as they used to be, and I feel like they should be more popular, because it kind of refreshes that you know, constant like superhero kind of thing, you know. Well, at least the mainstream movies, you know.
I would agree. I would say that like like in recent years, like in the last couple of years, there's been a little bit of a resurgence of like action movies. And I'm talking like mid 80s to like early 90s, like action movies, like big huge explosions, and like a hero that's like morally gray or morally questionable, and like he's kind of like doing things because he's got an agenda, not that somebody else does. And like You think of like your Jack Ryans or your like Jack Reacher or um, you know, stuff along
Chaotic
those
good.
right, yeah, chaotic good, or even just like chaotic neutral or whatever like that. And like,
I know what those words mean.
I know those. I know what that is. But like, I definitely feel like in recent years they've been trying to go back to that, but there's definitely not like just like old school action movies like there used to be. And I don't know. I think a lot of that has to do with just the studios in general, just kind of like they're not willing to pay to take risk anymore.
Yeah, I think that's what
Just
it
like
is. Honestly.
yeah, they just don't want to. They don't want to lose their ass at the freaking box office because nobody went to go see their movie. But like, I don't know, dude. I feel like to some degree, it's also kind of the same with like the superhero movies. Like, don't get me wrong, a lot of people will still go, and a superhero movie will still make some money. Like, there are certain ones that people are just like, okay, I really could care less, dude. I'll wait until that bitch comes out on streaming to watch it. Me included.
I think the only superhero movie I saw in theaters was I saw Iron Man, and then I saw the Avengers. That's it. That was my list. And Transformers. That was it.
Speaking of Transformers, did you know that the Transformers have comic books?
I did, yes.
Did you know that they have a more recent comic book line, the Energon universe, that crosses over with G.I. Joe?
Yes.
I did not know that.
Really?
Yeah, the G.I. Joe. Yeah, pretty sure I did. Yes, because I've talked to one of our coworkers about that.
Oh, okay. I think I know which one you're talking about now.
The
But
obvious one.
right. But I haven't read too much of it, and to my understanding, I think it's still being fleshed out. But one of the people behind it, he doesn't do any of the writing, I don't think, but I'm pretty sure his company, I think it's Skybound Media. It's Robert Kirkman, so the guy who brought you Invincible and like the Walking Dead.
Okay.
So he's like the head honcho there. So he's actually like the one kind of overseeing the like creation of this. They call it the Energon universe.
Nice.
It was pretty interesting. Spoiler alert for anybody wanting to read the Energon universe, but I'm pretty sure in the first or second issue, no, the first issue, Bumblebee dies.
What? Well, that's okay.
Optimus Prime is close to dying. I haven't read past I think the first couple issues, so I don't know if he actually does die or not, or if he kind of just if he comes back or whatever. But it seemed like it was pretty interesting because they had I think they had a Duke book, and then there was I'm pretty sure there was a Cobra. I think it's called Cobra, that Cobra book, and then Snake Eyes, obviously, because Snake Eyes like the one of the more popular G.I. Joe characters. So,
oh yeah, I didn't know about that crossover, and it's okay that if Optimus is close to dying because Decepticons for life. So, just saying.
Of course.
We were talking about this the other day, right?
Yeah, we were talking about that yesterday.
Dan, how do you feel about Autobots versus Decepticons? Which one are you for?
Oh, well, I haven't really. I mean, I watched a couple of the movies, but I haven't really been into it much. But
you're kicked off the podcast. Get out.
Oh, man.
And you said Autobots? Oh.
What's wrong with that?
I'm kidding.
All right, now you have to tell me why I'm wrong.
Actually, no.
Actually. I'm kind of there with you, Dan. Like, I like the Autobots, but like the Decepticons, not gonna lie, they are pretty cool. Like all their vehicle modes are pretty awesome. they're not just like cars or things that have wheels. They're like freaking jet planes and spaceships and
Stealth
one's a
bombers and
boombox.
shit.
Yes.
One is
All the
one is a
above.
boombox. One is a boombox with 2 tapes.
Laserbeak and
Ravager.
ooh. Yes, thank you, Ravager. Soundwave.
Which wasn't he? He was in what? I think the second Transformers movie as a satellite.
Third, and I believe he is he is definitely a satellite, but I think it's the third one.
Okay. Yeah, I couldn't remember which one, but I know he wasn't in the very first one.
No.
And
which is surprising because he's the intelligent officer, so you'd figure he would. Well, yes, no, he's the intelligent officer. You figure he would be in the first movie,
right?
So, but yeah, that's Michael Bay for you, I guess.
And it was all flash and no substance.
No, yeah, because I can tell you he wasn't in the second one because the second one ticked me off because they had the Constructicons in there, and Devastator lasted like 5 minutes on the big screen before he got shot and died from one shot, and I was so close to like I was because the Constructicons just like the I can't remember the one for the Autobots because they're the Autobots, but. Because they had a big one. Was it the Dino? No, the Dinobots or something else. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Devastator was my favorite. Like, all the construction vehicles coming together to form the big, like, Transformer. And then he dies. All he does is climb up out of a pit, get shot by a human weapon, and dies. And I'm like, wow. What was the point of that? So, I was mad. That's the second movie. 0 out of 10.
I remember. I remember in the third one when they finally showed Soundwave, and it was just it was a satellite, and I was like, I guess that makes sense, but like it makes sense for, I guess, the overall like narrative, but like I was just like, I wanted to see him as a boombox, bro.
Yep.
I wanted to see him as a big ass boombox and see him shoot a freaking tape that turns into a panther.
Well, that same coworker that I was talking about earlier, we had a debate at one of our D&D sessions about how and why Bumblebee was a Camaro versus a bug, and that was a whole almost hour conversation. So,
seriously?
Yes. So, I don't know.
I mean, in the movie, he was a Camaro just because of marketing, right?
Exactly, and that's what Ashley tried to tell this coworker of ours, and the coworker of ours wasn't getting it, and we're like, dude, you're not that unintelligent. You should get what we're saying here. But yeah, anyway.
Yeah, dude, that's all it was I'm pretty sure Chevy was a freaking sponsor, and they were like,
correct.
Hey, put our new Camaro in the fucking movie, and they were like, sure, he can be one of the famous freaking Autobots.
Correct, yes. That's exactly why, yes. That's all right. We forgive him. But see, even something as interesting as Transformers to me, I still haven't sought out like the comic books. And it's not that I don't like to read. I love to read, but it's I don't know.
I think it's not, obviously it's not like a thing that everybody. I mean, there was a reason why like comic books were so very cliche nerd or / geeky for a long time, was because like they're at the end of the day like they're picture books.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, people make fun of it. I like it because I'm into art and I like the art. Obviously, like back in the the 20s and 30s when comic books were new, the drawings were simple. They were cartoony. They were made to attract kids to freaking buy them and stuff. Whereas now, like the art has evolved and the readers have evolved because it's not just for kids. Like there are books that are just for kids, and there are books that are made to like entice kids or whatever. But I would argue that more than half of the fan base for comic books are adults that are around our age, if not possibly older, who grew up with this stuff and like to see that the art has updated and grown up with them, as well as the complex storylines and all this other stuff. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's really the picture book aspect of it that doesn't like interest me or whatever. It's just I don't know what it is. Because it's not like it's a bad thing, and it's not like I don't like them. It's just one of those. It's just like movies. It's not a form of entertainment that I run to.
Right.
You know, because and that's the thing is people comic books, reading, movies, music. It's all forms of entertainment, and just like I've said in like the past couple of episodes, I like gaming. Like that is my form of entertainment. Now that doesn't mean like if you guys suggest some of these things, I'm definitely gonna go check them out because again, the one that Dan brought up, even that cover, I'm just like immediately reminds me of like a Cthulhu-esque or a Eldritch being. So like, yeah, I gotta check it out. But so yeah, I wouldn't say that it's like it's not the picture book aspect of it. It's more just like I was doing other things like raiding in WoW or grinding in Diablo before I picked up like a comic book.
That's fair.
No, yeah, that's fair. And again, I'm not saying that like comic books are for everyone. I just know that in this let's say demographic of people, in terms of like geek / nerd, like that's obviously a very prominent medium for a lot of people is comic books as well as video games or board games or tabletop RPGs, things to that nature. So that's just one of the many things that like sort of drew me into this, this demographic, for lack of a better term. Just like video games were the same for you, and movies or TV shows are for some people, or
cars for Dan.
Cars for Dan. I mean, yeah, I would say that there is a term for people who are like car nerds or car geeks, so
Gearheads, right?
Gearheads. I mean, unless you're a ricer.
Whoa.
Ricer in recovery.
Hey, Dan, wow.
I think everybody starts out as a ricer, man.
Not me, man.
You said everybody, but
that's for another episode.
Yes. Tune in 2 weeks when Dan talks about everyone starting out as a ricer.
He starts telling you about the Bartlett / Streamwood scene.
Oh, don't let me get started on that.
Oh, oh man. How are we looking on drinks, fellas? I'm about done with my third.
With my 3.
I was on 4 and mixing it with the
I forgot you were doing that.
What's it called? A fireball.
You forgot.
I'm good to go.
All right.
Sleep like a baby.
Yeah, for real, right? Well, folks, I think that's it for tonight. So thanks for joining us tonight and talk about our topic of comic books. I had a good time, guys. Did you have a good time this evening?
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, I found some things I'm going to check out, and hopefully you guys check out Fables. I highly recommend it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, 100%. I'm gonna definitely have to check that out. But well, I think that's it for this Friday evening, folks. So for Friday Night Shit Chat, I've been your host, Nikko,
Dan,
and Nick.
All right, folks. Thanks for joining us. Have a good night.
Bye. See you next week. Bye.